Wednesday, August 16th, NFC West is the division we'll be breaking down today. Bunch of stuff that we haven't gotten to yet because it's been a while since we've chopped it up. So we'll get to all of those items and more today on the 356th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. As the calendar turns to August, it can only mean one thing. The NFL season is right around the corner. And with that in mind, the Louie T Network exclusives are back like cook crack. Choose from any of the three or all three of the LTN exclusives, Winners and Losers League, Soul Survivor Pool, Weekly Pick'em, all at your fingertips. Links are down in the description along with the video to help you sign up. Don't sit on the sideline. Get in the game. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 356th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. Of course, I'm your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, a few items to get to today, but we're going to start by breaking down the NFC West. It is a division that I'm really not high on this year. As a matter of fact, I think that there's a combination of factors as to why I don't love the NFC West this year. A lot of wild cards in this division to start. Brock Purdy coming off of an injury that was pretty gruesome in terms of his elbow on the throwing arm. So that is a problem for me. We'll see how he comes back, but he's got to fall back down to earth, right? He was in the clouds somewhere. The guy hadn't lost a game as a starter in the NFL, and then the injury happens in the NFC Championship game. I can't imagine him playing as well as he played last year. And maybe I'm wrong, and maybe he's going to come back, and maybe he's going to pick right up where he left off. We'll see. Geno Smith, Geno. Oh, Geno. Can he do it again? That's my biggest thing, is do it again, right? Like, I'm so happy for Geno, got the massive deal in the offseason. They didn't draft a quarterback after making it seem as if they were going to draft a quarterback. So good job by Seattle of pulling the wool over everyone's eyes and kind of making sure that their guy was still there at 5. That said, can he duplicate what he did last season? I'm not sure about that. Again, Rams, that roster has gone to shit, if you ask me. And I don't know how much Matthew Stafford has left in the tank. I think when healthy and protected, he can still play at a high enough level. The problem is, how long is he going to play for? I can't imagine him playing a full 17-game slate. I can't. And I don't think they have enough talent around him to help him out when he is healthy. So, and then the Cardinals, Kyler Murray is going to miss the first, 4 to 6 games of the season. That'd be my guess. We'll see if he starts the season on the PUP list. Then I'd imagine that he'll miss the first, 4 or 5. Possibly 6. That said, I don't think they're going to be that good of a football team. And I don't personally think that they hired a really good head coach. But again, just because you weren't a great defensive coordinator doesn't mean you won't make a really good head coach. We'll see. I just think that's a really sketchy situation in Arizona right now. It stinks, if you ask me. It smells a little fishy over in those parts. So you couple all of that uncertainty with the fact that they play 2 of the toughest divisions in football, in the AFC North and the NFC East. I think it makes for a tough season for the NFC West. Let's dive into the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. And me opening you up means we about to get into this gem dropping session in the NFC West. Let's start with the San Francisco 49ers and see what their offseason looked like. A lot of changes with this football team. Still some questions to be answered for the San Francisco 49ers. They're a talented bunch. And if they get the same play out of the quarterback position that they got down the stretch when they, I think, won their final 11 games of the season, I think, what was it, 10 in a row to finish up the regular season? They were 3-3 at one point, right? or was it 2-2? Might have been 2-2. They had to be 3-4 because they finished up the season 13-4 and they won 10 straight. So then you won a couple of playoff games after that. So can they pick up where they left off? Can Brock Purdy pick up where he left off? A lot of questions, not a ton of answers right now. Some changes on that defense, some for the better, some may not be. We'll see. Bosa still hasn't gotten his bread yet. We know it's coming here shortly, but in any event, let's dive in and make sure let me double check and make sure. I'm pretty sure he hasn't gotten his bread yet. I'm pretty sure, because that's going to be a record setting and it's well deserved. Yeah, he hasn't gotten his deal yet, but he'll get it before the season starts. They know better. Okay. They know that they can't function without Nick Bosa in his production. Similar to the Cowboys, understanding they can't function without their starting, future Hall of Famer Zach Martin at guard, like right guard. They know what it is, right? So they'll get a deal done. I'm certain of that. So let's take a look at the players that they lost this offseason. So they lost Jimmy Garoppolo, which they were trying to move him last year. And if not for the shoulder surgery, he would have been gone last year. And it's probably a godsend that he didn't get traded because they needed him last year after the injury to Trey Lance early in the season. So he's now a Vegas Raider. Samson Ebukam, I thought played really well for them. They actually replaced him. I think they feel like they replaced him. I'll talk about that here in a second. Emmanuel Mosley is now a Detroit Lion. Mike McGlinchey, that's a big loss to their offensive line. He's now a Denver Bronco, got a big deal in the offseason. Azeez Al-Shire, that's a big loss as well. He was great depth and played a lot of snaps for them at the linebacker position. No more Robbie Gould at the field goal kicking position. They, I believe, spent a very early pick on Jake Moody. And so no more Robbie Gould. Let's see, any more impactful losses here. Brandon Allen is now in San Francisco. Tyler Kroft. Tashawn Gibson is back. Josh Johnson, got him at the end of the year with all the injuries. Maurice Hurst is now gone to Cleveland. Don't think that's that big of a deal. Jordan Willis is gone. I thought he was a solid situational pass rusher for them. He's no longer there. Colton McKivitz, it's back. Tarvarius Moore. Juwan Jennings is back. And Charles Amenahu is the guy that I was thinking about. That's a big loss. He was another really good situational pass rusher for them. Now, what they went out and got to offset that, and Jimmy Ward, I don't know if I mentioned him or not, but Jimmy Ward moving on is a big deal in the back end of that secondary. That was a big loss. So Javon Hargrave is, I think, their answer to all of the things I just mentioned when I talked about losing some of those edge rushers. He's going to come in on that interior. You're going to put him next to Eric Armstead, and you're going to just let them wreak havoc. And now you've got Bosa, Hargrave, and Armstead on the same defensive line. That almost feels like cheating at a certain point. Just stick anybody at the other defensive end spot, which they'll probably do with Cleveland Farrell or one of these other guys, and just keep it pushing, right? It really shouldn't matter who that other guy is when you look at the three guys that you can put on the field at any point. So that's a big deal, getting Javon Hargrave and adding him to the mix up front. Sam Darnold comes over. Cleveland Farrell, as I just mentioned, comes over. And maybe a change of scenery does him some good after being a top 7 pick in the NFL draft about 4 years ago. He's now a 49er. Sam Darnold comes over. I thought he played well in Carolina last year. Didn't love him in the first preseason game, but I think he'll settle in nicely to Shanahan's system. He's going to be I think he's going to end up being the backup quarterback in San Francisco. Neither of them were all that impressive against the Raiders in preseason game number 1. Matt Pryor comes over from the Colts, and that's going to give you a little bit of depth on that offensive line. We'll figure out exactly what they're going to do at right tackle with McGlinchey moving over to Denver, but You have options. Signing a guy like Matt Pryor gives you options. Anthony Averett coming over from the Raiders. That's a solid depth signing there. See, John Feliciano comes over, more depth along that offensive line. See, Isaiah Oliver. I remember I thought he was going to be really good. He comes over from the Atlanta Falcons. Zane Gonzalez is over from Carolina, so that's going to give you a little bit of competition. I still think Jake Moody's going to ultimately be your place kicker this year. Hassan Ridgeway is now a Houston Texan, so that was another guy, if I didn't mention him, that ends up being a really solid loss for the 49ers. Brandon Allen comes over. He's also in that quarterback mix, but it's really fascinating to watch what they're doing at quarterback right now because Kyle is disgusted with all of the guys not named Brock Purdy at this point. Let's see. I think that was the last truly impactful player that's been added to the roster. So, honestly speaking, I don't think much has changed with this roster. If they're relatively healthy, the offensive line, I got some questions. We'll see if they have answers. But for the most part, if they're relatively healthy, they're going to be fine. My question and the big question is going to be Brock Purdy, and can he come back and play the way that he did last year? We know the weapons, we know the names, we know the guys that can change the game. Now it's a matter of, can they stay upright and can they get the same, if not better, play out of Brock Purdy, which it's hard to ask him to play any better than he did last season. Take a quick look at their draft. They did not have a first or second round pick that the San Francisco 49ers. So they didn't get busy in this draft for a while, but they got the safety Brown out of Penn State. Jake Moody, as I mentioned, coming over from Michigan to try to help there. You got Robert Beal Jr. Cameron Latu is a guy I like. They got him late in the draft out of Alabama at the tight end position. D. Winters, Jalen Graham, Braden Willis. Ronnie Bell is a late round draft pick out of Michigan as well. I think he's going to make that football team. And Darrell Luther Jr., a guy that I really liked out of South Alabama at the cornerback position. So it's a solid draft. It's a solid roster. Really, it is. And again, it just really comes down to what are they going to get out of the quarterback position. If that is what it was last year, then they're going to once again be one of the best teams in the NFC. Again, let's take a look at their schedule for the upcoming season. And I told you this, the reason I'm down on this division this year is because they play a tough schedule. They play two really good divisions, or at least two divisions we perceive to be really good. And these are top to bottom divisions where there isn't a weak link amongst the group, you know, the AFC North and the NFC East. And so week one, you're on the road at Pittsburgh. That's a tough start right there against a quality defense on the road. That's a hell of a test for Brock Purdy first week back. Then you're at the Rams in week two. That's a team that you've struggled with. I think you're starting to figure them out. You've had some success against them recently. Or excuse me, you used to dominate them. And usually you beat the Rams. And then you didn't beat them in the NFC Championship game when it mattered most. But you've gotten back to beating up on the Rams. You swept them last year. And I think you're going to sweep them again. But it starts with going to Los Angeles and beating them in week number 2. So 2 road games to start the season off. You're home for the Giants in week number 3. And that is a primetime game there. That looks like Monday Night Football in week 3 for the Giants. You're home for the Cardinals in week 4. Home for Dallas week 5. That's a Sunday night tilt. So, or that's a Thursday night game against the Giants in week 3. Beg my pardon. Week 3 is the Giants Thursday nighter at the crib. Week 4, home for the Cardinals. Week 5, home for Dallas. So after 2 straight on the road to start, you get 3 straight at home to counteract that. And 2 division games in your first 4. and then a big one against Dallas, a rematch of the divisional round. That's going to be hyped up really big. We'll see what those two teams are record-wise as you get to that Week 5 contest. At the Browns on the road, Week 6. At the Vikings, Week 7. Home for Cincinnati, Week 8. And then you have a bye week in week number 9. So looking at that little stretch there, after 3 straight at home, you get 2 straight on the road before Cincinnati at home, or 2 straight on the road before Cincinnati at home in week number 8. Come off the bye, on the road at Jacksonville, then home for Tampa Bay, at Seattle. That's a Sunday nighter. Then at the Eagles. So that's a tough little stretch there. At Jacksonville, home for Tampa, at Seattle on the Sunday night, and then at Philadelphia. That's 3 out of 4 on the road against playoff teams from a season ago. That's tough. It's really tough sledding. Then you have Seattle at home in week 14. So that's the second time you've seen the Seahawks. Cardinals week 15 on the road. That'll be it for the Cardinals on the season. Then you're home for the Ravens, at the Commanders, home for the Rams to wrap up your season. So again, this is not an easy schedule by any means. And I want to see how they navigate it. You know, health is going to be pivotal for them, because if anything happens to Brock Purdy, their season is done. They don't have a Jimmy Garoppolo backing him up to stabilize things. The best they can hope for is that Sam Darnold gets up to speed and is able to kind of play like he did last year for the Carolina Panthers in a reserve role, or else their season goes down the toilet if anything happens to Brock Purdy. But as I always tell you, when I'm doing these season previews, I'm assuming health. And I'm going to assume that Brock Purdy stays healthy. And because of that, I'm going to assume that the 49ers are going to be a good football team. I'm going to assume that he plays well. I can't anticipate him living up to what he did last year. That he was phenomenal last year out of the gate. I think now there's a little bit of, visuals on him. You see how you can scheme him up, maybe make him uncomfortable. He made some really crazy off-schedule plays that I think some of them also were a bit lucky. I can't see him, duplicating that. So I've got the 49ers, who were last year 13-4. I've got them at 11-6 this year. And you'll find out if that's good enough to win the division or not. So let's take a look at the next team up, and that's the Seattle Seahawks. And this is a football team that last year surprised everybody. You know, there were a lot of jokes being lobbed at the Seahawks prior to the season. There was one joke with, the Tennis Association, their Twitter account, pretty much making fun of the Seahawks because Drew Lock was going to be their starting quarterback. We all assumed he was going to be their starting quarterback. It ended up being Geno Smith, and Geno it felt like an out-of-body experience. We'll find out if that's what it was or not. If Geno plays like he played last year, then it wasn't an out-of-body experience. He's learned and grown as a quarterback, and that's just who he is now. But as of right now, I'm chalking that up to an out-of-body experience for Geno Smith. That said, can he follow that up with an encore? If he can, then they'll be right in the mix again to win this division. And I think they got a much better shot at winning it this year than they did last year. So they're a much more confident bunch. Let's look at what they gained and lost in free agency. We start with the players that they lost in free agency. So Shelby Harris is now a Cleveland Brown, really good football player, one of the players you acquired in the Russell Wilson deal. So that's a tough loss there. See, Poona Ford is now in Buffalo. That's another, big loss on that defensive line. Rashad Penny is now in Philadelphia. It's a shame he couldn't stay healthy in Seattle. Quentin Jefferson is now a Jet. So, I mean, your defensive line has just been decimated here in free agency to start. Al Woods is now a Jet. I mean, yikes. Let's see. Jonathan Abram is now a Saint. Yeah, I don't think that really is a big deal. LJ Collier never lived up to the first round billing. He's now in Arizona. Marquise Goodwin, some speed. Again, another guy that can't stay healthy, but when he was healthy, he was a problem. He's now in Cleveland.
Kyle Fuller comes over, or Kyle Fuller is now in Denver. Another, offensive lineman. You add Austin Blythe to that, and Gabe Jackson. There are a lot of guys that aren't on this offensive line from a season ago. Let's see. Ryan Neal, Laquan Treadwell, Tease Tabor, Cody Barton was a starter for you last year at the linebacker position. He's now with the Commanders. You got Tanner Muse, Penny Hart, Godwin Mbikwe. Don't see any more impactful players that are no longer there. So now let's get to the players who are now a part of the Seahawks team, who they added in free agency. Re-signed Uchenna Nwosu. Bring back Bobby Wagner. That was a really popular move among Seahawks fans. He's going to probably finish his career out in Seattle. Probably be his last year this year, if I had to guess. Devin Bush comes over, highly talented inside linebacker, but Steelers traded up for him in the first round. Never really panned out there. That's going to be interesting to see if they can't, light a fire under him and get him to play the kind of football that they probably think he is capable of playing. Bring back Jason Myers. Of course, Geno Smith got re-signed in the offseason. That was a big deal. Good for him. Jaron Reed comes over from Green Bay. So now you're replenishing this defensive line that was just absolutely obliterated by free agency. So you bring in Jaron Reed. Let's see. Evan Brown was a guy that I was really interested in from Detroit. You bring him in on your offensive line. I think that's a really good get there. Mario Edwards Jr. comes over from the Titans. So that's another guy to help replenish. But this is the big one here. Draymond Jones, who I thought was ascending in Denver. They swapped him out for a guy that I also feel like is ascending. And I think they probably got the better of the two with the guy that they got from Arizona. But nonetheless, Draymond Jones comes over from Denver to Seattle. That's a big, big, big get for you, because I think this kid is about to start playing some of the best football of his career. And he had career highs across the board pretty much in every statistical category last year. So you're getting him on the upswing, and see if he can't play some exceptional ball for you and keep that trend going. Looks like that Michael Jackson came back at the cornerback position. Julian Love comes over from the Giants at safety. That's a big deal too, as he's starting to play some good football. I think he's settling in at that safety spot. So that's a good move for the Seahawks as well. So solid free agency. I thought they lost a lot of players there, though, and weren't able to really replenish. You look at the draft. It's good that they finally got, Devon Witherspoon into camp. It took them forever, and that generally doesn't happen anymore now that there's a rookie wage scale. You generally don't have these kinds of hiccups. I think we might have even gotten into like the first 2 days of camp and he wasn't there. So that was a little sticky. I don't even know if that had to be offset language or something, but that's weird. It just is weird that he took so long to sign. But nonetheless, Devon Witherspoon, their first round pick corner out of Illinois. Jackson Smith and Jigba was their second first rounder. So you expect huge impact from those two guys out of the Big Ten immediately in year one. Zach Charbonnet out of UCLA is another nice addition. He feels like a Seattle Seahawk running back, physical runner with a little bit more athleticism than people give him credit for. Derek Hall as an edge rusher comes in to help. Got Double O here at center from Michigan, his teammate Mike Morris at defensive end. So this is a really solid draft by the Seattle Seahawks. And so I think they did a good job of helping themselves at a couple of positions that were decimated in free agency, adding some really high caliber football players at multiple spots. So again, that's why I said this division is a wild card, because it all really comes down to Geno Smith and his effectiveness. If he can do what he did last year, they've added talent. They're a quality football team. We know they're well coached. It really just boils down to, I love what they got out of Kenneth Walker last year. He's the real deal. And so when you look at what they have, they added another receiver in Jackson Smith and Jigba to go along with Lockett and what is his damn name? Big ass. DK Metcalf. They could have a serious passing attack. Like it could get really, really nasty out there. So let's take a look at their schedule and see exactly what these guys are talking about. So start off the season as we already talked about, or we didn't talk about, but they start off the season with the Rams. Week 1 at home. And then you're on the road for the Detroit Lions week 2. So not an easy start. However, then you throw the Panthers in there. You start the season off with 3 teams that didn't make the playoffs last year. I mean, if you're really looking to do what you did last year, which is surprise some people and get off to a fast start, they're giving you an opportunity to do that. Now, granted, the first game is in the division. It's against a team last year that struggled, that lost a lot of pieces. You got to find a way to take care of business at the crib. Lions are a chic pick to be really good this year. You're going to Detroit. You played them last year. It was a shootout, very fun contest, but you got the win. Can you replicate that? I don't know. I mean, it took 8 points last year to beat the Lions, and you needed just about every single one of them. I think it was 48-45 or something crazy like that. Be interesting to see how this one turns out. And then you're home for Carolina. You can't ask for a better start if you're Seattle. You got to take advantage of it, though. You got to come out of this thing no worse than 2-1. You really should be aiming for 3-0. Then you got Monday Night Football at the Giants in week 4. That's going to be an interesting game. You played them last year. You beat them last year. Matter of fact, I think you were the first team to beat the Giants. Second team. Dallas beat them first early in the season. And then you were the second team to beat them last year. Then you got an early bye, week 5. You come off that bye. You're at Cincinnati. So that's tough. You know, you got a bye week, but that's sandwiched in between 2 road games against playoff teams from a season ago. After starting the season off with 3 games against non-playoff teams, you come back and you have 2 games against playoff teams from a season ago. You're at you're home for Arizona week number 7, home for the Cleveland Browns week 8, at Baltimore week number 9, home for the Washington Commanders in week number 10, at the Rams in week number 11. You play on Thanksgiving night at home against the San Francisco 49ers. And then you have Thursday night football the following week at Dallas. Let's stop right there and kind of analyze what's going on here. So I think this is the part of the schedule that I feel like is after the bye week. Honestly, after the first 3, it gets real for you. But even let's just say after the bye week, it gets real because you got the Bengals should beat the Cardinals, Browns, Ravens, Commanders, Rams again for the second and final time, 49ers for the first time, Cowboys on the road on Thursday night football. Then you turn around and you have the 49ers for the second time in 2 weeks, or 3 weeks rather. So that's a quick turnaround, and you're seeing the 49ers again. Eagles after that at home. All right, Titans on the road late in the season. We don't know what Tennessee will be by then. I think they're going to stink by then, but we'll see. Home for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then at Arizona to finish up. So I think this is a schedule that I could see Seattle struggling with. I really, really, truly can. Again, it's tough because you play the AFC North and you play the NFC East, and a lot of those games are backloaded on this schedule. You know, you don't see your first AFC opponent until week 5 after the bye, and then they start throwing them at you. You got 3 out of 4 against the AFC North, and right after that, you start finding yourself playing the NFC East. You get the Commanders, then you get Dallas, and then you get Washington in a 5-week span. Let me see. 6 weeks, you played those 3 teams in a 6-week span. So yes, it gets real for you. This is a talented football team, and they're well coached, and so they're going to have a shot if Geno Smith is healthy and he plays the way he played last year. It's really simple. This is why this division is such a wild card, because you're banking on these quarterbacks having to do what they did last year, and you're not sure if they're going to do it because there's not a large enough sample size to know if they're going to do it again or not. So my guess is Geno will be fine. He will not play the way that he played last year. Geno Smith was a bona fide Pro Bowl player last year, not like a fifth team alternate. He literally earned his way to the Pro Bowl last year. I don't think he's going to play at a Pro Bowl level this year. That said, I think this is a solid football team, but they were 9-8 last year. I think they are 8-9 this year. They take a step back, tougher schedule, and no one's going to be sleeping on the Seahawks this year. A lot of teams, I think, slept on the Seahawks. That won't be the case this year. I've got them at 8-9. So now we look at the Los Angeles Rams, and I just don't think they're going to be very good. I think Matthew Stafford's on his last legs. I think that roster has been decimated. They're not. They made a deal with the devil and pushed all their chips to the center of the table to win a Super Bowl. They won it, and now they're paying for those sins. Look, when you do that and you get the chip, you can't complain. I really feel like they got what they wanted out of the deal, which was a chip. Anyway, let's take a look at what they lost this offseason. So Jalen Ramsey was traded to the Miami Dolphins. We know that they've been trading away first-round picks like their mind has gone bad, as if they don't need first or second-round picks. So to recoup some of that with this deal was good on their part. Ramsey's now a Dolphin. You lose Leonard Floyd to the Bills. Allen Robinson, who just never seemed to fit in last year, is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. Baker Mayfield, who resurrected his career towards the end of the season with this Rams ball club, is now a Buccaneer. You get John Johnson back. That may be a big plus for you, because he didn't play at the same level that he played for the Rams with the Browns. So another guy coming back or gone off the roster, Bobby Wagner. That's not necessarily a big loss, but he still played at a high enough level for you last year. Unfortunately, you just weren't very good. Ashawn Robinson is now a New York Giant. Matt Gay is now an Indianapolis Colt. Taylor Rapp, is now a Buffalo Bill. So Riley Dixon is now a Denver Bronco. A lot of losses here, as I've mentioned already. A lot of guys who are no longer on this roster. David Long is now a Raider. Let's see, Trayvon Howard is now a Bill. Greg Gaines is now a Buccaneer. That's actually a low-key, big-time loss. David Edwards is now a Bill. He was a starting offensive lineman for you. And Nick Scott is now a Bengal. So a lot of losses, as I mentioned. Let's see who you added this offseason. John Johnson, as I mentioned, back with the team that drafted him. That's a nice addition. Same with Bobby Wagner, or you lose Bobby Wagner. He went back to Seattle. Let's see. Kilo Witherspoon comes over. I still don't know what to make of him. Solid, I guess, but I don't think I really love that all that much. Hunter Long comes over from the Dolphins. They had too many tight ends. That's ultimately what that boiled down to. Royce Freeman comes over. Doesn't move the needle. Demarcus Robinson, I think that actually would be a really solid addition to that football team. Brett Rippon comes over. It's a backup quarterback in the mix, even though I think Sean McVay really, really loves Stetson Bennett. All right, I think that's the last impactful sign. So, again, not much here to chew on. Really big draft, though, after, not having a first-round pick. They got busy, and they decided to really, really go ham in the draft. Steve Avila was their first pick in the draft in the second round. Byron Young out of Tennessee, edge rusher. Kobe Turner. You got Stetson Bennett, who I really think Sean McVay has taken a strong liking to. Nick Hampton, Edge rusher again, Warren McClendon out of Georgia, Davis Allen, tight end out of Clemson, Puka Nacua out of BYU, a nice little wide receiver, Tre'Davious Hodges Tomlin, I think nephew, I believe, of LaDainian Tomlinson, I think. Zach Evans at running back, and a slew of other guys that they took, including Jason Taylor's son, Jason Taylor II. So a lot of draft picks. You can't rely on draft picks to come in and bolster your roster and help immediately. These guys may pan out and turn out to help this roster down the road, but in 2023, they're not going to have the impact that is going to be required to help this Rams team win at the level that Rams fans are probably hoping for this season. So let's take a look at the schedule of the Los Angeles Rams. You start in week 1. We talked about this already with the Seahawks schedule. At the Seahawks in week 1. Week 2, they are home for the San Francisco 49ers. Week 3, Monday Night Football at the Cincinnati Bengals. So this is a really tough start to the season. 3 straight games against playoff teams from a season ago, and 2 of them are in the division. So got to find a way to get off to a fast start. They got off to a lousy start last season. And if they want to right the ship, they're going to have to get off to a faster start this year. Week 4 at Indy. Week 5, home for the Eagles. Week 6, home for the Cardinals. Week 7, home for the Steelers. So right there, you look at why you have to get off to a fast start. It's 3 home games in a row, right? 3 home games in a row. 4 out of your first 6 are home games. So at some point they're going to come at you and they're going to start hitting you with a bunch of roadies. So you better take advantage of this stretch here. Week 8 at Dallas. Week 9 at Green Bay. Bye week. Come off the bye. Home for the Seattle Seahawks at the Arizona Cardinals. So you stop there. 3 out of 4, your next 4 after having 3 in a row, 3 out of your next 4 are on the road. You knew they were coming at some point to collect. And 4 out of your next 6 are on the road. So the inverse of what you got earlier, essentially. So got to take advantage of that stretch early where you got 3 home games in a row. It's not going to be easy. The Eagles are one of those games. You have a date with the Cardinals for the first time. Steelers are also on that in that stretch. Not going to be easy, but you're going to have to find a way to navigate it. You come off the bye week, home for Seattle, at Arizona, week number 13. You're home for the let me move this up a little bit. There we go. Week number 13, you're home for Cleveland. Week 14 at Baltimore. Week 15, home for the Washington Commanders. Week 16, Thursday Night Football, home for the Saints. Week 17 at the Giants. Week 18 at the 49ers. So you finish up the season with 2 tough road games against playoff teams from a season ago. So again, this isn't the hardest schedule in terms of some of the off teams that you play. Like you play Indianapolis. I mean, I don't know if that's going to be an easy game or not. I shouldn't say that like you're definitely going to beat them, but it's a very winnable game is what that is. What's going to be the saving grace of some teams in this division, like San Francisco, for instance, is you got to beat up on the rest of the division. This is not a good division. You got to go 5-1 in this division, 6-0, no worse than 4-2. If you're the Rams and you're trying to get back to the playoffs, you got to do the same thing. You got to split with San Francisco. You got to sweep Arizona, and you got to sweep, Seattle, or at least beat them once and go 4-2 in the division. If you can't manage to do that, you're going to struggle outside of the division because of the teams you're playing already. You got to take care of business within the division. So it's going to be tough. Here's my biggest concern for the Rams is Matthew. One, the roster isn't great right now. You lost a lot of stuff. That goes without saying. But the other thing that bothers me is the fact that Matthew Stafford isn't going to play in 17 games. I know that, you know that, we know that. And he's not going to play in 17 games. So with that said, how long is he going to play for? And what are you going to get out of him while he's healthy? I don't know, but I just don't think whatever it is, it's not enough. And I don't think they have enough around him. So with all that said, the Rams were a 5-12 team last year, even with all the turmoil and all of the injuries and the turnover. They were still 5-12. They're going to be better than that this year because you're going to get Matthew Stafford for a longer period of time. So I've got them at 7-10 this year, 7-10 for the Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, that's not good enough to make the playoffs, and we'll still have to hear, questions at the end of the season. Is Sean McVay going to retire and go to the booth, or grab him a nice, cozy job in someone's studio? What is he going to do? We'll see. So now we go to the final team in the division, and it's the Arizona Cardinals. And it's been a hell of an offseason. Kyler Murray goes down late in the season last year. He's out to start this season. So the assumption was probably going to try to upgrade the backup quarterback position. No. Just kept going status quo with Colt McCoy. And Murray will be back relatively early. I think he might be back sooner than a lot of us thought when he first had the injury because it happened so late in the season. But J.J. Watt retires. Budda Baker demands a trade. He's back in Arizona, though. But DeAndre Hopkins ends up getting traded. Chosen Anderson, who you traded for last year, is now in Miami. And so, it's a lot going on. A.J. Green essentially retired. A lot going on with this Cardinals team. You got a brand new head coach. You got a brand new GM. Again, a lot going on in Arizona. Ozenfort is your new GM, and your new head coach is Jonathan Gannon. We'll see what that pairing is able to do. I don't love it, but let's take a look at what the Arizona Cardinals ended up doing in free agency. So players that they lost, obviously traded DeAndre Hopkins to the Titans. Chosen Anderson is now a Miami Dolphin. You lose J.J. Watt to retirement. Rodney Hudson, I think, might be done playing football as well. Justin Pugh is no longer there. So, a lot of guys gone. Marcus Golden, who always just seemed like a really solid pass rusher, he's now in Pittsburgh. Byron Murphy, who played really meaningful snaps for you at the cornerback position, is now a Minnesota Viking. Cody Ford, who I had my eye on as a solid interior offensive lineman, he's now in Cincinnati. Nick Vigil at the linebacker position is now with the Jets. Tanner Vallejo is now in Minnesota. Andy Lee is no longer on the squad. Tristan Hill is now in Cleveland. Max Garcia is in New Orleans. Max Williams is not on a football team, but he's not on yours. That was a big loss, losing Zach Allen. I thought he had learned so much from J.J. Watt, had his best season of his career last year. I know you can't keep everybody, but boy, that one hurt to me. That felt like a guy you needed to hold on to. Camu Grugier-Hill, core special teamer, now in Carolina. Sucks what happened to Marlon Mack, tearing his ACL, or I think he might have ruptured his Achilles. That sucks. Michael Dogbay is now in Jacksonville. Trace McSorley sucks, but he's in New England right now. Okay, that's it for the impactful losses. Let's talk about the guys that the Cardinals have added in free agency. Pat Elflein comes over from the Panthers. Not really all that enthused by that. Kaiser White was a big signing at the linebacker position. He's going to come in, immediately upgrade the speed and athleticism in your front seven and give you some coverage ability down the field. LJ Collier, a guy you're very familiar with, having spent the first 4 years or so of his career in Seattle. He comes over. Dennis Daly comes over from the Titans, gives you some depth on the offensive line. Zach Pascal comes over from Philadelphia, gives you some depth at wide receiver. Let's see if there are any more impactful signings. Matt Hawk comes over from Indy, so he'll probably be your new punter this season. Bobby Price, Chris Barnes. Yeah, not a lot here that you get excited about. Anyway, first preseason game wasn't a fun one. A lot of missed field goals by both teams. Really sloppy affair, but let's take a look at the schedule of the Arizona Cardinals. I just don't think they're going to be a good football team, and I don't love their front office right now. And again, I don't know what Ossenfort is going to do coming over from Tennessee. He may ultimately be exactly what they need, but I don't love Jonathan Gannon as a defensive mind, let alone a head coach. But again, he could make a great head coach and just not be great at calling the defense. But nonetheless, let's take a look at this schedule. At Washington, week 1, home for the Giants in week 2, home for Dallas in week 3, at San Francisco week 4. And so, I mean, that's crazy. The first 3 games of the season are all NFC East opponents. So you're going to go ahead and get most of that out of the way right away, which isn't a good thing because you could use Kyler Murray in those games against these defenses. Probably won't have him for any of those games. And it doesn't get any easier. This is why I think they're going to stink this year. San Francisco, week number 4 on the road. Cincinnati, week 5 at home. I mean, your first 5 games, 4 of them are against playoff teams from last year. And Washington was like missed the postseason by a game. So, I mean, this is really tough. I don't really know what to say other than good luck. You're going to need it. Rams in week 6. Seahawks in week 7. Both of those are on the road, by the way. Yikes. Baltimore in week number 9 and Cleveland in week 10. So, I mean, literally, this schedule is chocked full of playoff teams from the season ago. And your first 10 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of your first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 6 of your first 9 games are against playoff teams from a season ago. Again, doesn't have to mean anything. Those teams don't have to be good this year, but it's just speaking to how tough this schedule just might be. So week 10, you're home for the Falcons. You're home for the Falcons. And then week 11, you're at the Texans. Week 13, you're home for the Rams. That'll be your second and final date with them during the regular season. And then week number, 13. So you got the latest bye possible. No, you don't. I think this is a week 13 bye. It's 14, 15, 16, and 17. So, yes. Come off the bye. Week 14, San Francisco 49ers at the crib. Final time you'll play them in the regular season. At the Bears, at the Eagles before finishing up home against the Seattle Seahawks. So this schedule doesn't really let up at any point. I mean, I guess, and again, family business is never easy, but I guess the lone stretch where you can actually breathe in this schedule he probably just started at Atlanta. And again, we don't know what Atlanta could be. They could be really good this year for all we know. But it starts with Atlanta, Houston, and LA. That you got to take advantage of that stretch if you're Arizona. You might not even have a win yet. Let me stop my shit. Yeah, I don't like this situation. I don't like Kyler Murray being out. I don't love Colt McCoy being your primary backup, knowing that you got to go to him to start the season off. I don't love your head coach and Jonathan Gannon. We'll see what Ossenfort is. They were 4-13 last year. They're going to be 5-12 this year. And I started them being 4-13. I said, nah, I think they're going to win an extra game. Can't see them being as bad as they were last year. So Murray will come back, and I think he'll help give them a boost, and they may win a couple games that they don't have any business winning. But I digress. So to wrap up this division, I've got San Francisco winning the division for the second consecutive year at 11-6. I got Seattle finishing in second in this division like they did last year. This time they were 8-9 instead of 9-8. LA Rams improved their record by 2 games. The problem is they were 5-12 last year, so that 7-10 isn't good enough to make the playoffs. And then Arizona stunk last year, went 4-13, fired Cliff Kingsbury, got rid of their GM who kind of stepped away from the game, and John Keim, or Steve Keim rather, and hired Monty Ossenfort. Then you hire Jonathan Gannon as your head coach. You lose a bunch of guys, J.J. Watt, A.J. Green, DeAndre Hopkins. You know, the list goes on and on and on. I just don't see this team being very good. I got the Arizona Cardinals at 5-12 to bring up the rear of the NFC West. So, all right, let's get to social media maneuvers. Y'all know what it is. I'm a midday marauder. If you're out there, you want your comment read, use the super chat function. First of all, don't be afraid. Touch that subscribe button, all right? That like button as well, all right? Ring that notification bell. All of those things help the Louie T Network exponentially. You want to support the LTN movement? Grab some merch from the store. The link is in the description. So check that out. Really appreciate all of you who have supported. Speaking of which, I got to give a shout out now, and I'm going to give another one later because I got a couple of people who donated to the movement, and I want to give them a shout out real quick. Can't thank you guys enough for your generosity. So let's shout out real quick. Twin Lake Energy Consulting. Twin Lakes Energy Consulting. Big ups. Bop, 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 bop. Big ups to Twin Lakes Energy Consultant for the very, very generous donation on PayPal. And Robert Witherall, thank you for your donation as well on PayPal. Can't thank you enough, Robert. Big shout out to my guy, Robert Witherall, for the donation on PayPal. Once again, shout out to Twin Lakes Energy Consulting for the massive contribution. Thank you so much. So let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say. If you're out there, you want your comment read, use the hashtag LouieTLive. If we got time, I'll get to as many comments as we can. If you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to do that. So, Reedy Davis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Reedy Davis, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Writes, Lou, missed date for Super Friends. Can't wait to listen to group debate. It's coming. We got some announcements as it pertains to the Super Friends coming up in the next day or two. So stay tuned for all of that. We are going to need all of your help in pushing this initiative. So I look forward to dropping that information on y'all in the next 24 to 48 hours. So stay tuned for that. Super Friends are about to unite and bring the heat as we always do when we link up. Thank you once again for the super chat and the support. So let's see. So I don't see any comments here. So I want to read a couple of things that have happened that have transpired since the last time we have spoken. So Zeke Elliott signed a 1-year deal with the New England Patriots. Up to $6 million is what he's going to get out of this deal. Good for him. And you can see the running back market is starting to settle in terms of running backs getting signed. Melvin Gordon found a home probably like 3 weeks to a month ago. I thought we saw one more running back find a home. Joe Mixon restructured. And I told you, these guys wanted no parts of camp. They weren't interested in signing a deal. I remember when Dalvin Cook visited the Jets, they were like, he doesn't seem pressed to sign a deal. That's because he wasn't, because he doesn't want any parts of preseason. He doesn't want any parts of training camp. So why sign? And that's why he signed this week, because he just got there. They're going to try to make sure he's conditioned properly. They're not going to just throw him out there. He's not going to participate in this second preseason game. They're not going to play him in the third preseason game, more likely than not. And so he's going to pretty much, get away from all of that contact and be ready for the season. So that, I think that was the aim for both of those running backs. Zeke Elliott gets a 1-year deal up to $6 million to join the New England Patriots. Meanwhile, Dalvin Cook signs a 1-year deal up to $8.6 million to add to what the Jets are building out there. They're building a bully, and Dalvin Cook is a big get. Breece Hall just came off of the PUP list. They're loaded, man. The Jets are loaded. They're going to be a dangerous team. I really feel confident about that. Again, the key is going to be keeping Aaron Rodgers upright, but they got the defensive talent. They got the coaching staff that gets the most out of that defense. They got a ton of offensive weaponry, and they got Aaron Rodgers, pulling the string. I just think they're going to be a dangerous team. Adding Dalvin Cook makes them even more dangerous. The Colts named Anthony Richardson QB1 after his initial start against the Bills in the preseason. It was an up and down performance from Anthony Richardson, but it was enough there for them to say, what are we doing? Like Gardner Minshew, we're not good right now. We're not going to win a bunch of games with Gardner Minshew. So let's just get the Anthony Richardson, era started. Get this guy a bunch of starts under his belt. Let him learn. They're going to be dangerous with him, though. If he's, an active runner, that's going to open up some holes in the passing game as they go with the fake, and he pulls it out of the belly of the back and finds a wide open tight end or receiver running up the seam. That's going to be a tough offense to defend, but all in all, it's going to be fun to watch Anthony Richardson play. He's QB1 in Indianapolis. We lost a running back the other day, Alex Collins, former Seattle Seahawk, former Baltimore Raven, among other teams. He might have even played with the Arizona Cardinals at one point. Gone at the age of 28, died in a motorcycle accident. Prayers to his family. Gone too soon, way too soon. And, the thing I remember him for the most was his river dancing. He was so good at the little dancing, like it was like a river dance / Irish dance. And I remember him talking about how, learning those dances made him the running back that he ultimately became. And it's funny because you see him doing those dances and you're thinking about, oh man, this guy got to be a little soft. And then you see his running style and he was as physical as he could be. So just an unfortunate situation all the way around, as Alex Collins is now gone at the age of 28. Zach Martin and the Dallas Cowboys resolved their conflict that they had. It was a stare-off, and it was a game of chicken, and Zach Martin was prepared to stall out the Dallas Cowboys. For as much as Jerry Jones likes to talk that shit, every time one of these players has him by the balls, and he knows it, he antes up. He did it with Dak. He did it with Zeke Elliott when he went to Mexico. He caved in and gave him the contract after talking all that shit. Dak obviously had him by the balls, and he had to, give Dak the contract that he ultimately got. And then, he was talking all this shit about Zach Martin, how, we got to pay CeeDee Lamb and we got to pay Michael Parsons and we got to pay this guy, we got to pay that guy. And so we don't have any money to do anything with him. And Zach said, I ain't trying to hear that shit. Do you know that I just got a 99 in Madden? I ain't trying to hear that shit, man. Where my bread at? And so he was sitting. And, Boss is a Cowboys fan. And I asked him about it. He said, look, man, we ain't shit without him. You rarely hear that about an offensive lineman, but that is true. Like, Zach Martin is the heartbeat of that Cowboys offense, if you ask me. He could do so many things. I think he's a first ballot Hall of Famer when it's all said and done. And so they needed him. And he felt like he was underpaid. Now he restructured his deal, signed a deal that's going to make essentially he's going to make 36 million over the next 2 years. So that's over $18 million the next 2 years, which puts him right where he feels like he needs to be in terms of the top and highest paid guards in the NFL. So good for him, stalling out the Cowboys and getting what he deserves. And then finally, Jonathan Taylor is back at Colts practice. Now, he's still not practicing, still recovering from ankle surgery, but he's back at the facility. And obviously, that whole situation with him is going to blow over because he's not, he's unlike, the guys on the franchise tag who haven't signed it and don't have to come back. He's under contract, so he has to show up. But obviously that situation has gotten really frosty with the comments from Jim Irsay. So now there's really just one dude who's standing firm. And I told you, if there was a martyr amongst the group, it was going to be Josh Jacobs. And then there was just one. We'll see what happens with that situation. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to our final segment of the show and garbage time. So, Hard Knocks episode 2 was released last night. Haven't had a chance to watch it. Looking forward to checking out that episode and diving into that. NFL preseason, and we'll talk again before the preseason gets underway week 2. But it starts tomorrow, Browns and Eagles. We'll see if the Eagles decide to play Jalen Hurts and some of the starters for a little bit. That'll be the third preseason game for the Cleveland Browns. So one game on Thursday. We'll be back on Friday to preview what is probably going to be a long slate of games. As a matter of fact, only one on Monday and one on Sunday. So, and there's one on Thursday. So the other 13 games are all on Friday. So it's going to be, 2 on Friday, and then the other 11 are going to be on Saturday. So busy Saturday. Looking forward to that. We'll take a look at some of those matchups tomorrow. We don't have to do that right now. We'll take a look at some of those matchups tomorrow. But looking forward to watching episode 2 of Hard Knocks, and also looking forward to taking a look at some of these matchups, because I think you're going to see if there were ever a week where a ton of teams who aren't really looking to play their starters all that much were going to play them, it'd be this week number 2. That's the new dress rehearsal week. It's the new week 3 in the preseason. I surmise that a lot of teams like the Bills who didn't play their guys, the Lions who didn't play their guys, the Giants who didn't play, I expect those teams to at least to give their quarterbacks a possession or two in this second preseason game. But again, we will see. So I digress. My guys, or rather, I will see you guys on Friday. We'll be back. What division will we be on Friday? That's a great question. I think we're back into the divisional round at that point. So I think we're going to the AFC South. I guess we'll go to the AFC South. Jacksonville Company. So that's an interesting division, but it still sucks. So we'll talk about that division and what I think is going to become of it in 2023. We'll talk about any other, topics that arise. A couple of guys have gone down to injuries. We'll talk about that on Friday. Hopefully the injury reaper slows down, but starting to rev up the engine a little bit. So in any event, if you're a Washington fan, I will see you later on tonight as we will recap day number 2 of the joint practices, the final joint practice with the Baltimore Ravens. If you're not a Washington Commanders fan, then I will see you for the Louie T Network podcast on Friday. Until then, you guys take care. God bless and have a good one. Peace.
LouieTeeNetwork.